Hello again, and welcome to Tuesdays with Schwartz. I know you are all excited. Last week I introduced the new school model, 3 tiers for education, and this week I want to take a closer look at why the one classroom, one teacher model does not work. So why don't we do one thing, and let's bring common sense back to education. But what is common sense? For starters, if you limit learning to one teacher, that means kids can only go as far as the teacher knows. That makes sense. If a teacher only knows X, the kids can only learn X. They can't learn more than the teacher. But what we decided to do because of that limitation and in No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top, what we said as a nation is make the teacher learn more. That makes no sense. In fact, it's insane. How much can one person know? They can't know everything. So just by using a one classroom, one teacher model, we're limiting what students will be able to learn. And that's part of why this is a big problem. Instead, does it make more common sense to let multiple teachers teach the same students? Yes. And if we have each teacher responsible for only one tier within the team, doesn't that make more sense for the teachers because they can get really good at their tier and then they can also rely on the other teachers to teach what the students haven't learned from them. So there's sort of that team collaboration going on within schools. Does that make more sense? Yes, because it's common sense, but we're not using common sense right now in schools. So why don't we look at what some research says? So one research study talked about what's called differentiated instruction. Now, what is differentiated instruction? So to put it very, very simply, differentiated instruction is what teachers are supposed to do is meet the multiple intelligences of the classroom. And there are 21 different multiple intelligences. I like to focus on 3, the main 3, which is auditory, visual, and kinesthetic. And what that means in layman's terms is auditory is listening skills, visual is observing skills, and kinesthetic is hands-on skills. Now, if we just stick to the one classroom, one teacher model, that means that the teacher has to meet all 3 of the main multiple intelligences. But again, we're talking about 21 multiple intelligences overall. That's a lot of work on one person who's trying to do the best they can. And it kind of is setting the teacher up for failure so that we can just blame at the end of the day that you didn't teach my kid. But in fact, it's not their fault. If we put the teacher, one teacher, into a system which allows multiple teachers to teach the same student, then one teacher could be really good at auditory, one teacher could be really good at visual, and then the third teacher could be really good at hands-on skills. So that student actually moves through 3 tiers of learning and gets multiple intelligences met. That makes way more sense than what we're doing right now. Now, if we stick to the current model, the one teacher, one student, one classroom model, it requires the teacher to spend about 10 minutes per student on every lesson. And if there are 20 students in a classroom, that means 200 minutes per lesson. That's over 3 hours. Kids only go to school for about 6 hours a day. So you'd be able to teach 2 lessons a day with our current model. That doesn't work. In fact, we all know that it doesn't work, which is why schools are failing. Now, we've been blaming the wrong people. Schools are not failing because of teachers, because of principals, or because of funding. They are failing because we use a 19th century school model in the 21st century. That's it, bottom line. We're using an old model. And if you teach 19th century thinking, what do you think you're going to get? You're definitely not going to get 21st century thinking. That's impossible. But let's compare what they did in the 19th century to what we need today in the 21st century. So in the 19th century, they used one classroom to teach. Well, that makes sense. There wasn't that many kids. Also, just to point out, in the 19th century, only white males went to school. They didn't need that many classrooms. So let's be honest about it. But in the 19th century, they only hired one teacher to teach the whole class. Again, because all they were learning was reading, writing, and arithmetic. Just think about what we're teaching in schools today. The high-level science, the complicated math, all of the social studies. I mean, we've already gone well beyond what the 19th century is. We're teaching the 20th century and the 21st century in schools now. So there's a lot more content to teach in the 21st century. So the 19th century can't keep up. So what do we need? We need to be able to meet the multiple classes and multiple teachers to put it together to handle multiple intelligences, multiple paces of learning, and to support all the learners within a school. One size no longer fits all. But why don't we check to see what Madeline Hunter had to say about this? And again, she didn't know about this particular model, but she is considered one of the greatest educational experts of the 20th century. And so in 1985, this is what she said. What's most important, I'm going to read this to you. What's most important is not that anyone blindly follow my model, but that they develop propositional knowledge or knowing what affects student learning so they can make sound professional decisions when designing and delivering lessons. Now, what does that really mean? It means don't stick to my model. Use it to listen to student needs and adapt to the learner. This is critical, and that's why the 3 tiers work. Now, I didn't develop this system in my head and just go, oh, this is just common sense. No, it was developed inside a school, in classrooms, with multiple teachers doing exactly what I'm saying. And it works because it actually helps the students who struggle the most in schools. So imagine what it could do for the kids that don't struggle in schools. It'll promote learning at the highest level, accelerate those kids, but it won't allow any of the other kids to fall through the cracks. Now, there's also some hidden benefits. 3, in fact, from the 3 tiers for education model. 3 tiers eliminates teacher isolation. 3 tiers promotes the use of RTI. And 3 tiers also eliminates the silo effect. All things that are affecting schools today in a very negative way. So I want to thank you again for joining me this week on Tuesdays with Schwartz. Stay tuned for the next episode next week. We're going to, again, deep dive into this 3 tiers to explain more aspects of it and why it makes sense. But if you're already on board, I hope that you will follow me on Instagram and on Twitter @RewardsPro. And I hope to see you next week on Tuesdays with Schwartz.